It's Earth Day. You know, every day is Earth Day in my book. This is Webisode 19 of CFX, The Connection of Things, streaming live to you from Secwepemcúl'ecw, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc Nation in southern British Columbia, Canada. Yeah, it's Earth Day. And there's a famous quote out there that I really, really like. We don't inherit the earth. We borrow it from our grandchildren. Now, there's a discrepancy about who coined that phrase, and I think actually QuoteInvestigator found at least potentially 26 different sources. So it's unclear exactly who said it first, but there is no discrepancy about the wisdom of that quote. We don't inherit the earth. We borrow it from our grandchildren. Right? This clearly bestows responsibility on us to future generations. And I don't just mean like leaving something for the future. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is all of us have a responsibility to teach what we know to the next generation that's coming along. To teach what we know and to offer them as much opportunity as we had, or possibly more, to meet their needs and also to be able to sustain into the future beyond that. I think the key element for me is responsibility. And it's not like you just turn the lights off for an hour, one day a year, and you're done with Earth. I think that we got to be more engaged in this, and we need to be working hard to empower our future generations to keep it going. And if you know me, you know this is a very big part of who I am. In Webisode 12, we talked about BC Tomorrow and the simulators we've now got in classrooms, live online, available to anybody in the world, actually. And we talked about that with Executive Director Dave Ramsey. And in Webisode 17, you got to meet Sophie Collins, who's just about to complete her physics degree at Thompson Rivers University. And she was an intern at the Secwepemc program. And we talked about interns and developing those future students. And I'm happy to say that actually I just got some notice that I think we're going ahead again this year with 4 students, including outdoor learning. So that's super exciting. I've shared with you my stories about taking students out during National Forestry Week to see slugs in the bush and how exciting that is, and our efforts to start the Greater Victoria Community Forest Society. The common theme here is that, you know, as much as what we're doing today, a prosperous future largely depends on the next generation of leaders. And the cumulative effects of providing our youth with tools and knowledge, a safe place to learn and explore now while they're young, and access to others who are already currently in the sustainability business as a society, that investment, we're all going to feel the compounding benefits of that in the decades ahead. Now, my guest this week is David Tracey. And David is also a guy who's deeply committed to education, instructing, and sustainability. Hi, David.
Hi, Barry.
David's a writer, environmental designer, teacher, community ecologist, and he's based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Pretty nice spot. And I need some notes here because, wow, this guy is doing a lot. He's a journalist. He's a best-selling author. He has a master's in landscape architecture and a BA in politics. That's a real base of diversity. And here's something cool. Like me, he uses systems analysis and design that he's picked up in school as part of his company. His company is called Eco-Urbanist. Now wait though, there's a lot more he's doing. He's the founding executive director of Tree City, which is a nonprofit group helping people and trees grow together through urban forests. Very cool. He designs and leads a number of courses at Simon Fraser University in their continuing studies program on sustainable landscape design, also through the Kwantlen Polytechnic University and Gaia College. Wow, I thought I was busy. How did you find the time, David? And right now, on top of it all, David is managing the new Indigenous Land Stewardship Certificate Program for the Native Education College in Vancouver. And we're going to talk a lot about that. So, Dave, I'm really, really excited to have you on the program today.
I'm thrilled to be here too on this auspicious day.
And we've got Sarika over in comments and reactions, our assistant producer. You can see her there. Way to go, Sarika. Give her a thumbs up. Remember, this is a live show. So if you're watching us live, throw us an emoji, fire in a comment or a question. Try to figure out a really tough question for David. We'll see if we can put him on the spot. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Punch it right between the eyes. We got to get this movement going, and one way we do it is by gathering ourselves together. So, David, Bird and Blues on the street, loose and complete. Let's get this show on the go. See this? News anchors do this all the time. They shuffle their papers. It makes them look like they got lots of things to say. It's just because I can't remember everything. So, David, hey, share something with us that is kind of cool about you that we wouldn't know if we were just looking you up on the internet on your website or on your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, you've asked the toughest question right at the start because there's literally nothing cool about me. I got nothing.
Nothing?
I will tell you one thing, though. Here's something.
Okay.
On this Earth Day, this is kind of I should apologize to the planet because we know how airplanes are, not good and travel is, we can't travel anyway now. But one of the implications in climate change is air travel. And I once took a plane that went around the world. I was on a plane that went around the world. Yeah.
And you don't think that's cool? I think that's pretty cool.
Well, I just think of how much the carbon emissions I emitted as part of that Concord flight.
I see.
It was a promotional flight for the Concord to try to set the world record for speed around the world by a passenger plane, basically. So it was the Concord with the champagne and the canapes and all that.
So you were doing supersonic?
New York, JFK, yeah, sure. We went from JFK to JFK and arrived 31 hours later. I forget the record.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've been trying to make it up ever since in carbon reduction emissions. I have no idea what I helped put into the atmosphere on that.
But that would be interesting because, if you're taking a 747 that doesn't have the range of that, you'd have to be like up and down maybe 3 or 4 times. I wonder, and because the Concorde was supersonic up at, in the stratosphere, thinner air, I wonder if the fuel to distance ratio is different.
Well, we did have to touch down. So we refueled I'm trying to remember. In not Paris, Toulouse in France, Dubai, Bangkok, Guam.
Oh, wow.
Maybe there was one other, Thailand. Yeah, Bangkok. So they did have to stop to pick up fuel along the way, but only for that. There was no, they were trying to set a record. So they were just, okay, you can step off the plane for a minute. This is going to take about half an hour. And then we'd step off, get in the lobby, look around. A few places they had kind of events going on. There was a mariachi band in Mexico. Thai dancers in Bangkok was quite nice. But then back on the plane. Yeah, kind of crazy.
Well, I'd say that's pretty cool. And yes, carbon footprint noted. People who know me know I've always wanted to be a pilot. I've done it in several different ways. And right now I'm just halfway through being certified as a paraglider pilot, which has a really light carbon footprint, especially if you do hike and fly. I mean, there is some carbon involved in building your wing, but after that, so that really interests me. And Concord was quite quite an aircraft.
Well, crazy that here it's 2020 and we're slower than we were. I mean, we could do what we do now in about what, 1970 or so.
Yeah.
Boeing, they were coming out with, I remember the 707 came to our
Yeah.
town. I grew up partly on the Air Force Base in Trenton.
Ah,
So we'd see a lot of these planes. And what we could do then is about what we could do now. So it's kind of weird how we haven't advanced. We've almost regressed in moving around the world. And maybe we're going to regress even more if passenger flight is going to become much more restricted. Did you see in France, they just put a law about any trip, any plane, any trip that could be 2.5 hours, I think it is, by train, you're no longer allowed to schedule a flight for that same distance. And it's all about the climate. The whole
that's
reason
brilliant.
I think so. That makes sense because they have the train infrastructure to be able to
Yeah.
do it. In North America, we've kind of, large ways crushed our train infrastructure, sadly. So it's a little bit more difficult. But the tracks are there. The trains are there. It can be done.
They are looking at a super train from Edmonton to Calgary in that
Oh,
QE2 corridor because there's a heck of a lot of traffic there, and it would not only be faster, but it'd be an incredible reduction in GHGs. In California,
hmm.
trying to build theirs as well. That's interesting because, like, that's a place where policy can influence cost and time, or even just availability for us around our choices, and help us make something like investing in a super train more affordable. So
Yeah, and how one decision like that affects everything. Because if it does get built, what does that mean? It means now maybe you don't have to have the car to make that trip.
yeah,
Maybe that influences all of the development along those tracks if there's stops on it and there's places where a community is now viable to live in. So it's not like in San Francisco now you can't live there anymore. And even, some of the wealthier
yeah,
high-tech people are getting out just
yeah,
because it's gone insane with the
yeah,
amount of land property values and trying to live there. But if this meant high-speed connections meant we could live more distant places and get to where we need to be without compromising, without baking the planet, that's a new world we're talking about.
Sarika is looking for train emojis because she had a bunch of airplane ones there for
Nice.
the Concord. Well, okay, so boy, did I ever open a box there. So David, you and I were just only recently introduced, actually, through a mutual friend of ours, Kyle Hilsendegger, who's a natural resource specialist. And he's also he's at one of the guest speakers that you have at the Native Education College. I think it's just so cool how networking brings people of common interest together. I mean, that's sort of a fundamental underlying this show is bringing us together. The internet is another amazing low carbon option for people to collaborate. I mean, we're all kind of getting sick and tired of virtual because that's all we've had. But I think, long term, I just think about the upcoming CFX 2021 conference we have in May, and we have experts from all across North America joining in, and nobody had to get on the Concord to get here to do it. So I think we're going pretty green this year. But anyway, so Kyle introduced us, and that's how I found out actually about the work that you were doing, and we met and said, hey, we should do this today. You're leading the land stewardship program, and land stewardship and cumulative effects, well, they go hand in hand. But there's a lot of schools out there offering, sustainability type programs. And I guess I'll start with our topic today. Just help me understand, why would a student who's interested in secondary education, why would they choose the Native Education College?
Yeah, there are a lot of choices and a lot of interesting programs being done in various places. At NEC, there's a few things that make it unique. It is the Native Education College, so it's steeped in Indigenous ways of knowing, Indigenous values, Indigenous policies, Indigenous relationships. It's quite different from the other institutions where I'm sometimes lucky enough to get a part-time thing or a side gig or an adjunct thing teaching at. It's been in Vancouver for more than 50 years. And that
Wow.
surprises people when they hear that. Even in Vancouver itself, even among the urban native population, there are people that don't know it exists.
Wow.
It's kind of been small and in some ways flying under the radar, if we're going on with our airplane analogies. But the people who do find it, if they when they come and they apply themselves, it's a place where they can turn lives around. It's really exciting. One of them was Melanie Mark, who is the MLA, the representative in the legislature, the provincial legislature for my riding right here. Went on from NEC to get
Very
her
cool.
degree in criminology at SFU, become a lawyer, a practicing lawyer, elected to the province, and the first Indigenous cabinet woman to serve in the BC legislature. And there's lots of stories like that. So if you're an Indigenous learner, we like to say this is where learners become leaders. And
Ah,
it's a great place for folks who may not have had a great experience with their secondary education, their high
yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, most who did have a great experience in high school, very few. But for
Yeah.
Indigenous folks, especially, it doesn't really set up for Indigenous folks to do well. And it was when many of them didn't do well, it was sort of like, well, that's what we expected of you, and thanks. And you either got out with a piece of paper or you didn't. There was a lot of things that
Yeah.
just didn't work out. So for some of those, especially who are just finding their way back to the prospect of academia as a way to sort out who they are, where they are in this world, what their role could be in this world to maybe make it a better world. NEC is, I think, a really great place. There's all kinds of different programs. There's ones in business. There's
Yeah.
adult basic education. There's family counseling. There's a lot of different programs. It's a lot of ways to really start to make a difference. I think you can do that at a Native Education College.
Yeah, I'm just sharing with everybody the website, and we'll come back to that. But yeah, you can see all the programs down the side there. It's geared towards I think over 21. Is that right?
I'm not sure what the official age is. In fact, we just had a conversation about this. I don't know, but I had a student last year who was 18, so I don't
Okay.
think you have to be 21. I think
Okay.
if you're over 21 and you haven't graduated from high school, you can enter as a mature student. And then
Oh.
there's a literacy assessment test you have to go through and pass. It's a college,
Okay.
it's college level studying, so there are some requirements.
Yeah.
Um, but it's meant to be as open, welcoming. There's a lot of Indigenous values which are reflected in the college and its policies. So opening, welcoming, holistic approach to education.
Yeah.
You said I was a leader of the Indigenous Land Stewardship Program, and I
Yeah.
have to flinch a little bit at that word. I'm
Okay.
in no
Sorry.
sense a leader of it, I don't think. I see myself as a facilitator. And it fits in well, actually, for the way the program works, but also just for the way when I teach the courses, it's the same way. And I warn the students or alert the students up front that I don't have the answers. I'm sorry. I wish I did. It would be easy if
Yeah.
I could just say them and you could remember them and give them back to me at the end for a test, and you'll get a great mark and we'll all be happy here. And it's not like that. It's and it fits in well with the more current methods of learning and the pedagogy of advanced learning and post-secondary learning,
Mm.
in which what's the saying? You're not the sage on the stage, but you're the guide on the side. So
Oh, I
I'm
like
very
that.
much that. I'm just a facilitator. I'm only there to sort of work together with the students. And I tell them at
Mm.
the beginning and throughout, it's a shared journey we're on. There's answers out there in the future, but we don't have them yet. It's not just that I don't have them. I don't believe anybody has them, because we're looking at a whole new world of understanding how to live on this planet. And we're going backwards, not backwards, I shouldn't say it that way. We're looking to the past to get the
Yeah.
best of indigenous ways of knowing
Right.
and thousands of years of tradition and living with the planet in holistic ways, honoring a reciprocal relationship with the living world. And we're also looking at the future because we are in this developed world. We are, it's crazy what's happening to it. Bad, some good. Here we are talking like this to anyone in the world who has the same kind of not that expensive computer to join us,
Yeah.
but a whole lot of bad we know because we're burning, we're cooking. The house is on fire and we have to do something. So we figure the
Yeah.
solution comes in some kind of a synthesis between these two. The traditional ways of knowing, indigenous ways of knowing, modern Western science and technology, and using those tools.
Yeah.
Something is going to come out of this, and we don't know what it is. I don't think it's here yet, but we just want to be able to support enough of the new leaders who can take us there through starting with education.
Yeah. That I hear this from a number of indigenous nations that I've been working with or had the opportunity to speak with and learn from. And it's increasingly becoming something that's of high awareness, I think, on indigenous and non-indigenous perspectives, is this idea of walking on two legs. And Sonny Laborde from Secwepemc shared at the first CFX conference this concept of walking on two legs, where we're benefiting from contemporary Western science as well as traditional knowledge, and recognizing that they don't always converge, but they are often parallel. And just having that both perspectives actually can make us much more powerful. We can use the best parts of both of those ways of knowing. And I think that, since the Industrial Revolution, we got on a bit of a ride pushing one of those ways of knowing much harder than the other, and we've probably gone a little bit too far in our zeal on that, because now we find ourselves pulling back, as you say. So, I'm not Indigenous, and yet I find myself reaching into those learnings and working a lot with Indigenous nations. I've always been welcomed. Are you Indigenous?
No, I'm not. Well, when I first was asked this at the interview to get the job, it's not that I know.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
That's
no,
true.
I'm not. I'm of mixed
So,
heritage, European and North African. A long history, I think, of people who are escaping oppressors in a lot of
right.
cases. I mean, the Irish
Uh,
came when the English colonizers, perfecting the art of colonization, practiced it on the Irish. And I've also got some Polish blood who
mm,
they've had an interesting history themselves of living with dominant neighbors and sometimes being subdued by them, and North African. And the story is my grandfather was stowed away on a ship and sent to North America as a way to escape being conscripted into the Ottoman Wars, into the
wow.
army at the time. So a long history of, I guess, I sometimes wonder why I feel so fortunate, but why I've been fortunate enough to be in the role I'm in as, I guess, an ally. Sometimes we see that term, and
Yeah,
I'm very happy to be identified as that. If someone thinks I'm
me
an
too.
ally, I mean, I try to be, I should say. I'm not even sure if it's presumptuous to think it. I really am an ally. But being non-Indigenous and working in Native Education College with the Indigenous Land Stewardship Program, I'm fairly aware of the contradictions inherent in the whole business from the get-go.
Yeah,
And I just try to approach it with a sense of respect, a sense of seeing injustices where they are, where they're obvious,
yeah,
and what can I do to sort this out? And for me, if that's environmental injustices and social injustices, and if there's a way to work these together, which it turns out there are, with an indigenous worldview and indigenous ways of teaching and learning,
yeah.
um, then maybe we can get away with it. And so I should
Yeah.
just say the program itself, we built it on the framework of an earlier version of this program, and it was about 20 years or so ago. So no institutional memory of it that I could tap into at the college, but we did have all of their work in the elder consultations, in feedback groups, in community outreach. So they had a really solid framework of what the
Mm.
communities that we are on. I'm grateful to live and work in the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Squamish and Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh nations,
Yeah.
um, building on what they had said would be important. And then when it came time to revitalize or create this new program, we went with Indigenous curriculum developers. We hire Indigenous instructors. The whole content is deeply Indigenous. So I feel like I shouldn't be the one to judge, but I feel like it's not really a barrier that we
Mm.
bringing the Indigenous aspect to it, again, in my role as a facilitator and not really a leader.
Yeah. So thanks for correcting me on that. My errant use of that word, and it's important because words are important. And I hear what you're saying. Like I'm a third generation Canadian. My ancestors came from Scotland, in many ways persecuted by the English as well, and they immigrated to the northeastern United States and Canada. And I talked with Kathy Porter a few episodes ago about the fact that colonization is a part of Canada's history, and while it hasn't been taught well in schools, I think that's improving, and the more that we're aware of it, the better. And I think that this really underscores an important element, that we're all in this together. As one of my colleagues, good friends, Dave Nordquist from the Adams Lake Indian Band says, we're all sharing this watershed, and we're all here together, and there are ways we can do that in a productive, effective, collaborative way, or we can be, bumping into each other. And I think just even acknowledging, it's an acknowledgement of differences in culture and heritage, but it doesn't mean that any one culture is better or more insightful. And then I think that's an important point, is that we can all bring something to the table. We can all learn from one another.
Yeah, I think that gets at the spirit of what I find at Native Education College. It seems to me really a blend of nations. I mean, in my
Yeah.
classes, when we say, okay, well, where are you from? And
Yeah.
it's always a mix, a really interesting mix, sometimes within the person themselves. My father's from here, my grandmother was from here, and a mix of
Yeah.
this and this. Within the college itself, when there's social things and gatherings there's a longhouse in Mount Pleasant in Vancouver, and there's a lot of things happen around the fireside lounge there. And I always get this idea of it's like the United Nations or a mini United Nations, that all these different nations are coming together, and no one nation has the attitude of, well, just follow me, I got this, or you're on my land, or this is my turf. I'm the one who knows this. Even within what we call Vancouver now, it's a shared site, and we're still trying to work out what that
Yeah.
means between the three nations here. So there's a really a sense of openness and inquisitiveness, and you'll see students sharing lunches and say, "Oh, my grandfather just caught this. He got his trap lines working again. Try some of
Nice.
this." And one will say, "Oh, what do you call that? You call it this because we call it that, and we put some soap berries on it." And
Mm.
so it's really a great place to kind of tour the world, or in a sense, like I've always liked travel and international cultures and the mixing of cultures. And it's amazing to me and an endless source of delight that I can get this right in East Van, where I'm lucky enough to work.
Isn't that incredible? And, this is a really nice segue into the next segment, but I was just thinking when you were saying that, next week, our guest is Gina Lucarelli from the UN Accelerator Labs in New York. And it's all this holistic perspective, understanding cumulative effects, understanding how environment nourishes people and people create economies, and that these economies, especially now in our connected world, span great distances, if not the whole globe. That's where those answers are, is that we need to be thinking on understanding what's happening at home, but understanding the bigger scales too. So I'm going to switch to the Forest of Whispering Speakers segment. And I haven't been including the cool jazzy blues music intro in the latest rendition. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today, because I know that, oops, where'd you go? There you are. This is always interesting with Barry's tech. I know some people were asking me for this cool little vibe. And if you're into the blues, throw a little music note emoji in there or something, and as Gord Downey says, the blues are still required. And Gord Downey is the one that inspired the segment, The Forest of Whispering Speakers, which is a line out of the song For a Good Life You Just Might Have to Weaken by the Tragically Hip. Gord wrote, I think he wrote all the band takes credit for all of it all together, but I know he's the driver behind it. And I'm always inspired by artists and the lessons that they can bring for all of us, but especially for scientists like me. There's a lot of wisdom there. And so we have this segment called The Forest of Whispering Speakers, where I usually draw upon songs. Sometimes they're popular, sometimes they're not well known, that bring a little bit more weight to the conversation that we're having. So today I want to introduce everybody to a new group that I discovered called Old Crow Medicine Show. Have you heard of them, Dave?
The name rings a bell.
I hadn't. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a huge country music fan, but they are, I guess, in that country music genre. They've won. They were one of the top 10 bluegrass albums in 2004 at the CMT Music Awards. They won a Grammy in 2012 as the best long-form music video. They were the winner of the Trailblazer Award for Americana Honors and Awards Show. Let's see here. If I get to... Where's my share screen? And I go to here. Here's a YouTube video. You guys can look this up. Interestingly enough, on Old Crow Medicine Show's YouTube channel, they don't have this song there. But this fellow, Eric Philbrook, captured, I guess, a bootleg version of We're All in This Together. There's the band there, along with Norah Jones, who made a little celebrity splash. And I'm going to come back to the lyrics. Now, we're all in this together, and we've been hearing this a lot with COVID, but I think this is the idea of the holistic perspective, that we are not separate parts. We're all part of these bigger systems. And that's really what cumulative effects is driving at. So I just want to share a few of the lyrics. I invite you to go watch that video, listen in. They're a pretty cool bluegrass band, very bluesy. Together, everyone. Let's have some fun. Come on, let's do this right. You start in with the lyrics, and then something that I thought really probably relates to the education aspect, and that is that all our dreams have no limitations, and that's what it's all about. And we have this ability, especially through our youth, that they have this amazing opportunity to create the future they want instead of just accepting business as usual. And it goes on in the next section. Everyone is special in their own way. We talked about this. We make each other strong. We're not the same. We're different in a good way. And that's diversity, which equals resilience, which equals sustainability, and the ability to make it through adversity and change, which is ever present. I won't go through all the lyrics because it's really, it's way beyond just 3 verses here. But speaking out with one voice, everybody makes some noise. And when we're stuck together, we're champions, one and all. We're all in this together. It reminds me of the 1910 Laurier Memorial, where there were 4 nation chiefs. I was talking about this with Sophie, the Secwepemc, the Okanagan. I can't remember. There were 2 other chiefs of nations got together with James Tate, and they were invited. They were welcoming Laurier, the Prime Minister, out west. And one of the things they said is that, together we will stand each other up and be great and strong. So that was that, that's that sort of deep perception of how, an understanding of how cultures can strengthen one another. When we reach, we can fly. We know inside we can make it. We're all in this one together. So, I would play it, but I've been getting into copyright infringement spankings from various record labels. So I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to encourage people to go check out these guys, Old Crow Medicine Show. And I particularly like this live version with Nora Jones. But I think that, that's really what it's all about. We're all sharing watersheds, right, David?
Yeah, that's now on my list of things to go look at on YouTube. So that's going to crowd out some juggling cats and things in a good way. But I really like what you're saying about, and this is why I like ecologists. I like scientists, but I like ecologists especially, because this is what I'm always telling my classes is that, and here's the lesson I tell them on the first day, and I keep harping it and, throughout the whole school year, basically, is that everything is connected. And if you learn that, if you know that, you'll have the solution to a whole lot of problems, a whole lot of dilemmas when they come up and you can't decide this or this. Well, just remember, everything is connected. And I ask them because they're Indigenous students. And what does that, ecology is a new-ish science. In 1870, I forgot, 78, something like that, when the term was coined by a German scientist. And to us, it's kind of new. I guess it had its big resurgence in the 60s around when Earth Day was being created in 1970, if I have it right. But the ecology, the sense of everything is connected, that's an old, ancient idea. And Indigenous folks have been saying the same thing. And I asked them, and what is it? What have you been saying? What have your elders been telling you? And then someone will say, all my relations. And I'll say,
that's what I was going to say.
Ecology. Yeah. And so the cumulative effects, which is another thing we teach in the ecosystems class, I think that's fantastic. I'm excited about that conference too, by the way. I'm signing up and I'm looking forward to catching whatever I can of that.
Yeah, we have, we're on an Indigenous spin today for sure. There are 7 Indigenous knowledge holders and scholars speaking at the event. And not the least of which is Dr. Leroy Littlebear from the Blackfoot Confederacy, and some other elders. And I think that the lessons, they are firmly standing in both worlds and see those connections. And that's what I'm always told. It's the connection to all our relations, which leads to this whole aspect of, we talk about our connection to ecosystems and rocks and trees and water. But another very important connection that we're sort of talking about here is the connection of generations and the transfer of knowledge through time. And so, when a student graduates from the Indigenous Land Stewardship Program, I guess there's a lot of different ways they could go, but maybe just paint a picture for us as maybe a potential trajectory or something like that for that person.
This can be a difficult question too. We're not like some programs that are fairly prescribed for what you are doing when you come in and where you're going to be when you go out. Like the family counseling, a lot of those want to go into counseling, and there's a large need for counseling. So that's what they're going to do. Or if you're going to take sheet welding, you've looked at the market and you've seen, like, I can get hired as a sheet welder and make this much an hour. So all I've got to do is learn these things, and now I'm there. When we talk about land stewardship, though, it's so wide and broad and deep. And there's nothing, I haven't found it yet, and I've been looking for 2.5 years now, that is not connected to land and how land
Mm.
and it's used. So what you
Yeah.
do when you come out of the program, it kind of depends on you, what you think is most important to you, or your community. Your future career has to come, a big part of it, because everybody wants to make a living. We want to be able to be at least financially supported, even if we are doing the work we want to do in our heart that we feel is best. We got to pay rent. We still got to eat.
Yep. Yep.
So
For
job
sure.
wise, I'm not sure. So one student at the end, he came into the program last year, and his goal was to be a park ranger. He wanted to work outside. He wanted to be sort of an interpreter or a liaison between the land, the site, and the people visiting it. And he's
Yeah.
quite articulate. He's like a lot of our Indigenous students, very well spoken. And so he finished the program, and a week or two later was hired on for the student ranger program that Metrovan was putting on.
Oh,
And
cool.
he reported back it was the best summer of his life. It was he had his uniform, and he was all spiffy, and it was exactly what he wanted to do. Another student is working in her band office in the land and resource department, and something with education as well. Youth
Mm.
programs, I think, introducing youth to environmental, ecological ways of thinking about their land and how it should be used. We have students who are interested in nonprofit work, social work, advocacy. And one of our students last year joined an anti-poverty group in Vancouver,
Mm.
where he's based. So it really depends on the student. It's both an advantage and a disadvantage, I think, that we're so biodiverse. So it means you could take it anywhere because land connects to everything. But it also means it's not like set up for you. There's not a
Right.
finish line where, okay, here's your golden ticket,
Yeah.
take this ticket and your paycheck is over there. You kind
Right.
of have to bring some of that with you, or you don't have to have it at the start. Sometimes I think it's better not to have it at the start, but by the end, you've been introduced to 10 courses on really widely varying subjects, viewed through an Indigenous lens, and hopefully something over those 10 courses has sparked something inside you that made
Yeah.
you think, oh, I really want to do this. I could see doing that with my life.
Yeah.
That's what we hope for anyway.
Yeah. It's funny how I like what you're saying about just basically having that flexibility. It's one of the things that, I got a forestry degree, but I've used it in many other different ways because it introduced me to two of my new passions, which are economics and ecology, which turns out are pretty similar disciplines, actually. And then you have this ability to shape it the way you want. So here we are. I'm doing a YouTube live stream show as part of extension, I guess, and exploration and continual learning for me. So it's amazing. I think what young people, there's a lot of, with a strong foundation like that and understanding that that's where the future really rests for everybody. The school will produce people that, even if they don't work in land management, when it comes to an election or choosing leaders or developing a movement of people organized in a certain direction, they're going to understand all of those basics, and they're not going to get snowed, for sure, which is going to make, and that's one of the things we're really working on in BC Tomorrow is all the students are not going to become ecologists or scientists, or they'll go on to do all manner of things, but they'll be much better informed citizens, and they'll demand more of their political leaders to make sure that they're getting it right. So I think that that's a really strong thing to be excited about too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
It's, it's funny what you were saying about the park ranger. I mean, there was a time that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be one of the interpreters at Jasper.
Mm.
And, I've gone on to do it in various ways, just not wearing a park superintendent uniform. But Yeah, I can totally relate that he had a great time, especially in a place like Vancouver where there is a high awareness of our connection to the land with the ocean and everything else that's there. And, the south coast of British Columbia is beautiful, beautiful spot, Salish Sea.
Yeah, and is that
Uh-oh.
dinner ready? Is that
That dinner is ready,
I
which
got
means
hungry.
I think your dinner. That's the signal to get to the rapid fire questions, which is my favorite
Ah,
chance to roast the guest.
fire away. You need some roasting.
And people, I get lots of feedback on this. This is one of the favorite segments in this show. So the best part of it is you didn't get to study for this test, so we get to catch you off guard. All right, so it's 10 questions, personally selected and drafted by me, knowing you, but I will reassure you there's nothing super dangerous in here. So most of them are just fast, rapid fire answers. Are you ready?
Yep.
I have to have my goggles on here because my eyes are getting old. What's your favorite number, David?
16.
Oh, Bobby Clark. Well, that tells my age, doesn't it?
I used to wear 16 because I liked Bobby Clark
Nice.
at the time.
Yeah. Flin Flon, Manitoba, I think. Favorite color?
Yeah. Blue.
Blue. Great color. See behind me?
Yeah.
Last song you downloaded?
Oh, it was Laurie Anderson. Songs of the Bardo. Something in the Bardo. A
Cool.
whole album by Laurie Anderson.
Laurie Anderson. Now I'm going to look her up. Not familiar. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Me too. You're a writer. Do you compose on paper, a typewriter, or a word processor?
No, almost always on the computer.
Ah. I would have pegged you as having an old typewriter that you'd be pounding away in some
Yeah. I really like that idea too.
dingy attic.
Once I first got the first Candy 100 or whatever it was, where you could actually type and see it on the screen, which was about a line or two across, and go back and backspace your mistakes, I was sold. I thought, okay, this is so much better than taking the white out, having to rewind the rip and all of that. Oh, what a troll that was.
Yeah, I bet nobody at NEC knows what liquid paper is.
I don't even know what we're talking about. A couple of dinosaurs here telling them how rough it was. Kids,
Dinosaurs,
you have no idea.
Yeah, when I went to school, let's see, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
8.
8. Well, that's good, especially in
Yeah,
a big
mainly
city.
because I don't have a car, so I don't drive. So nobody's at any danger from me running over them soon.
So you ride a bike?
I do ride a bike mostly around. I'm lucky to be most of my connections, work, and things are bike distance. We have a pretty good car share program in Vancouver now. So when I do need a car, it's easy to find one of 3 different ones I belong to, I think.
Nice. Hot shower or a cold plunge?
Oh, well, 9 times out of 10, it'll be the hot shower, but I do like the cold plunge.
You like it?
I do.
I'm trying to
I grew up, I
learn to
surfed
like
for a
it.
long time. I liked surfing. I surfed for many years. And so that bracing effect of that cold jump in the water would just it's like when you see these guys in sports taking the, whatever that stuff is, they put under their nose and get that jolt.
Oh, yeah.
You get that jolt from the cold, but it's bodily. It's your whole body. All the cells seem to tingle. Your skin comes alive, and then you're just ready to go. I really like
ready
that
to go.
feeling.
I've been working on it. I think I've been for about 2 months now. I've been taking a cold shower every morning.
Oh, I hear it's really good for you.
To me, it's like running out of quarters at the campsite. But anyways, so it's funny. I wrote this before this question before I heard your opening comments. But say something cool, David.
Something cool. Old Crow Medicine Show.
That's very
The
cool.
coolest thing I know now, and I haven't.
At
even
least
heard
you
it
didn't
yet.
say "a."
Oh, is that what you were looking for? I didn't know that.
No, I wasn't. But that's probably what I would have said. All right, climb a mountain or jump from an airplane.
I guess I'll go with the mountain. I did jump from an airplane. I did. Is one of the things I was when younger. I just wanted to experience everything in life. So jumping from an airplane was one, and it was great. It was fine back then. Now it's weird how fear and timidity and a whole lot of negative things come into you as you age.
Yeah.
It's just much less appealing to me now to think of jumping out of an airplane. I don't know why. Like I would think about more now. What happens if the chute doesn't work or this? And back then, it wasn't even. You don't think about it.
True.
Now I'm 22. I'm going to live forever. What do I care? I'll jump out of this plane. It might be a rush, but I like mountains too. I like being in the outdoors. So
yeah. Well, I've done both, and now I've thrown myself off mountains, but I think it's way safer than driving, to be honest. So, last question: who inspires you?
Ooh, wow.
And I know there's lots,
So
but
many.
pick one.
Yeah, there are lots. Okay, here's the most sucky answer I can think of. Well, I'm not trying to make it this way, but it is. But I'm going to say the students.
I knew you were going to say that.
Especially at NEC, the students we get, some of them come through challenges, personal histories that once you hear them, you've been bugging them for a week or two to turn in that late paper, and all you got to do is do it. Why haven't you done it? I've given you all these chances. You're still behind. What is this? You get frustrated with them, and then and only then they might come out with a story, and it's such a rich history of different sort of experiences they've been through, challenges, blocks, traumas, and I just listened to those like I'm astounded. There was one last year. I'll give you one quick one. There was a student who was trying to get her paper in and wasn't getting it done, but she was really smart and good at school, but just wasn't doing it. And then one day her daughter showed up at the classroom door and, asked to come speak. And the mother went out, and then I went out because the mother called me and she said, "Oh, is it okay if she leaves early?" The homeless shelter where they're staying, her daughter was sick at school and was sent home, and the homeless shelter won't let children stay there in the daytime. So she's going to have to go home too, go with her daughter too. And is it okay if she leaves?
Oh.
And so when I hear stories like that, that's inspiring to me just to think, oof, they're going through so much to be able to take all of that and yet channel it into, no, I'm going to do something that's for the good of me, for the good of others. I want to learn this thing to make a better planet of it and do the good work in a good way.
Yeah.
I just find that really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I kind of thought you were going to say that. I'm getting doing more and more instructing. I was mentioning the Colminta program, working with Sophie Collins and Jana Whale on cumulative effects projects, working through all of the background of it, and then having them sort of self-direct. And we used models to do simulations of climate change and movement of things like Husham, and very cool to just watch them learn and come up with ideas that I would have never have come up with. And it's very inspiring to see those new ideas. We've got to move on. We're having a great conversation here, but we need to start pulling in the back end of this show. And we've got this very important segment called the CFX Library, which David just keeps hiding from me. I don't know why he does that. Why does he do that? Anyway, this was a book that in the CFX Library, we ask guests every week to come up with a reference outside of this conversation that they would recommend people go look at. Could be a book, could be a website, could be a peer-reviewed report, could be a oral telling. And Gathering Moss was the one that you gave me for this week. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Sure. This is by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's an indigenous woman, a scientist, a botanist, who is only recently, I believe, becoming widely known. And I first came in contact with her 3 years ago, I think, when I started teaching at NEC. And the book we had on signed in the class was Braiding Sweetgrass.
Yeah,
That's her
yes,
better known book. People,
yes.
because it went on to become, I think, a bestseller, and she's become quite known because she writes so eloquently about this bridge we're talking about between the scientists community and the indigenous community and those ways of knowing. And she's one of the more really effective writers on this. She writes beautifully, and it's really interesting. The topic's good and the style is good. So, what more do you want out of a book? In this case, the book is about moss. This came out before Braiding Sweetgrass. I happened to be in the bookstore and I was just looking for whatever. It was one of those serendipitous sort of looks. And I saw, oh, there's a book on moss. Oh, cool. I know nothing about moss. I know a little bit about trees. I'm an arborist, so I had to learn a little bit about trees, but nothing about moss. And I knew that moss was probably more than the thing that they invented, the moss killer, to get rid of it on our lawns, because for some reason it was a source of shame if we saw moss, and we had to kill it. Bad, and maybe it's ruining everything. And moss was the enemy. I was kind of in that mindset, but thinking that can't be all there is. So I saw this book called Gathering Moss. Thought, oh, maybe that's one. And it was only then that I saw, oh, it's written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, because she's awesome. And the book itself is awesome. It's just really good. It turns you into a moss aficionado, and you see the world in new ways. And wherever you go, you see moss. I think it's on every continent. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually a
Yeah,
sign, one, that your air is pretty good, because moss
yeah.
doesn't grow in polluted air. And it's fascinating. There's a whole world down there in those little tiny mosses. And that book helps bring it out. So that's what I recommend.
Sweet. That's sweet. Thank you for sharing that. And honestly, like David is far too modest. So I've got a addition to the CFX library this week, and my addition is David Tracey's books, and I'm putting them up here. You can check these out, davidtracy.ca shop. You can see that right there. And he never would have brought this up, but I thought, looking at it, you can see the books that he's got available there. Not very expensive. Really look super interesting. David, I have not read your books, but you've got a new customer. So I really like this Saving Nature with Engaged Ecology. This looks pretty awesome. And, urban agriculture, ideas and designs. Most of the world's population live in big cities close to the coast, and we're all trying to figure out what to do. The Vancouver tree book. I mean, there are some amazing, amazing trees in Vancouver, especially the sequoias brought up from California. And so, yeah, I think I'm probably going to buy them all. And I thought I would just share that here today because I knew you wouldn't say it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, fantastic CFX library. Great conversation. Native Education College, davidtracy.ca. You can find both of us on LinkedIn, so you can connect with David and I there. Leave comments or questions here underneath the video. And David and I will follow along, and if you've got some comments or questions there, for sure we'll follow up with you. Be sure to check out what they're doing down there at the college, and if you're in, mostly in British Columbia, and interested in that pathway for education, that's a good one. David, I really want to thank you for spending some time here with us today. I want to thank Sarika for holding the fort over in comments and reactions as our assistant producer. And I want to invite everybody that's watching the show to hit subscribe. It's not like I'm going to get rich on this show or anything. That's not what I want. As we build momentum in the community, a couple things happen. We can influence how YouTube sees this. And I know that there's millions of us out there. We just need to be able to connect, and this is a way that we can do it. So when you hit subscribe, you tell the algorithm, hey, this is good stuff, and YouTube will show it to more people, and we can build some momentum. So go for it, do it. And the other benefit is you'll get a notification when there's something new, so you don't have to do any work. David, any last thoughts before we close out the show?
I'll just say thank you from my heart for the opportunity. This has been really great for me. I've enjoyed the conversation, the topics. I think we could go on much longer, and I think actually we will. You're going to be a guest speaker meeting our students, which I'm really excited to happen.
Yeah, I'm excited about that
thank you
too.
very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to come and share. And lucky for me, you're just a short drive down the road. Once we get through this pandemic, we'll go out for a coffee and maybe we can meet some of the other students as well. In fact, maybe what would be a great idea, I'm just thinking about it now, is let's plan for this. Perhaps in the fall, we could do a show with some of the students.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be exciting? Yeah.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Well, all right. Until next week, we have Gina Lucarelli from the UN Development Program Accelerator Labs in New York University. Going to be an exciting show. Make sure you tune in for that. And David, thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, and happy Earth Day.
Yeah. Thank you.